The floor is yours now, Miss Sahar. First of all, I'm really pleased and honored to be here among you today, and I'd like to congratulate you, Ms. Abla, on the effort you're exerting and the work you're doing here in the center. And all what you said really moved me because I experienced this. I'll comment briefly on what was said. Uh, the linkage between tourism, aviation, and antiquities. Yes, need to also involve central bank planning, local development, and other ministries because tourism is closely linked to other services. If we want the tourists to go to the archaeological places or destinations, they need to move in good roads, in good transportation means. So we need to broaden the linkage between the different competent ministries. We need to have a ministerial group for tourism, just like the economic group, and this is very, very, very important. Also, the ETTA should be an independent organization. You have every right to say so. We are still waiting on the unified tourism law, but we should have a federation or a union, and this union should be elected. We will start the hearings soon in order to save time, and this is like a window to get the information included in the law. As for transportation, I think it's basic, it's self-evident, and we have a problem there. As for monitoring or updating the tourism businesses offices here and abroad, we of course need to know and select the people who travel very well. If I want to check the qualifications of these people, because these people represent Egypt abroad, so what are their qualifications to be so? In the parliament, we started discussing most of these points, and we want to have coordinating committees bringing together different ministries responsible for antiquities, archaeological sites, and attractions. As for cultural tourism, it went down to represent only 15 percent all over the world, and we should get at least 10 or 12% of this 15% because we have unique cultural attractions here in Egypt. But whom to blame now? The Ministry of Antiquities, the Ministry of Tourism, or who else? We need to assign responsibilities to each party. So this archaeological site belongs to the Ministry of Antiquities, which does not have enough budget. So they try to do some digging works, and that's it. But for the general tourism services, who is responsible for what? This is really important. Assign roles to be able to monitor and control later. We have a holding company for services to be formed. I also know that we have a vision for involving the private sector with the government to take care of some of the attractions or destinations, and this happens all over the world. Also, the Egyptian Museum and the Giza pyramids. We took a decision with the Minister of Local Development, Tourism and Antiquities. We want to take this place to be a role model. We want all the ministries and competent authorities to take care of this place, and then we can replicate the model elsewhere. But we need to start earlier, since the tourists reach the airports, or even before, when they want to get the ticket, or the Egyptian Museum ticket, or the pyramids ticket, when they are still at their home countries. They can do so via the internet, as this is done all over the world. I want you to visit Giza pyramids to see the progress made, and we will inaugurate this place, I think, in June. We exerted much effort there. But as for the Grand Egyptian Museum, which is the biggest museum all over the world, I think all authorities and ministries should take care of this. We still have 1 year before inaugurating this. We should start marketing this abroad. All our planes should have a logo, maybe on airplanes or on different transportation means. This inauguration should be an international event, attracting many guests. We know that the president is really promoting the tourism sector, but he is the top of the pyramid. We still need to help a lot, and as you said, some information is not available, or some branding is not done well, so we need your help. We have exerted much effort, but we need to double this.
I also talked about the performance follow-up of tourists. We are paying a lot. If you give each tourist to fill in a form, or to provide him with a reduction, 10% reduction on his ticket, by this we can exploit and make use of the of each tourist, and to benefit from. This is very, very important. How we make branding, and why don't we make a branding for Luxor, for example? Luxor and other places are very important, but I can separate each city, and I start to make conferences in such cities, and to make branding for each city in Egypt, to work on different kinds of activities. And we have to start with what we have, and to improve it, to improve Egypt. In a lot of points of view, people believe that Egypt is the pyramid, but we have to improve the pyramids area to be in line with the most significant attractions, and then to start to improve our infrastructure. When I take my car and go to the pyramids from Garden City, or to go to the audio and the audio and sound and light show in the pyramids, I can see a lot of negative issues and a lot of challenges. I know that there are steps taken, and I'm not saying that we are not developing, but I hope that we make more effort in order to develop tourism sector, because it is a very important sector to generate hard currency. Schools and universities. We have talked to the Minister of Education, and we started not only in the universities, but with primary stage students, to know a lot about the archaeological places and the attractions in Egypt, and to give them instructions on how to deal with tourists who generate our national income, and in order to make those students keen on the monuments, on the attraction places, and the importance of such a monuments, not to engrave on them or to write on them. We also have the conference activity or the conference tourism, the exhibition tourism, which is very important and workable. And I'm going to talk about a kind of tourism activity by which I'm going to refer to Dr. Muhyiddin. Hunting tourism. You see how people go to places, how many people go to places, travel to places in order to hunt, and they don't even benefit from what they hunt. I'd like you to give us a brief about this. We have this kind of tourism, and no one even addressed this subject. We always address the traditional issues, and people who travel abroad, they pay a lot in order just to hunt and go back home. As for the retired people or elderly people tourism, it is out of the question. Why? People who, after they retired, they have a great income, like the German people, and when they come, we like to treat them well. When they take the flight, they pay and they receive a service for what they pay. We never addressed this kind of tourism. So I don't know why we never addressed such kinds of tourism, but I'm not going to prolong. But I hope that Dr. Abla, because this is our second meeting, to work a lot on such a sector and to collaborate together, the parliament, the government, the private sector, and experts. We all have to work together in order to enhance this type of tourism. I would like to add the people with disabilities, the tourism, because we can see abroad how the buses are oriented to people with disabilities. And yes, you mean the infrastructure. Another thing, we need the tourists. We need when the tourists come to our country. If, for example, we are having people who are going to Dubai, they go to for nightlife and for gambling, and we have to state in our mission what are the tourists are going to do when they arrive in Egypt. So we have to do this to market for this. I'm going to add two words. Dr. Muhammad Zakaria, would you please brief us? And it's if not you, one of your colleagues are going to travel to just to hunt. How much do they pay in order to travel to for a hunting tourism activity? Hunting tourism used to be in Egypt during 1976. But when we go for hunting abroad, we pay a lot of money. I'm not going to give you a figure, but we pay a lot and we don't even benefit from what we hunt. It's a very significant number. We we pay €2 per one bird, but we have a lot of facilities, accommodations, and in Egypt, before 67, the foreigners used to come to hunt, and this was marketed abroad without any limit, and we never charged them for each duck or each dove or each pigeon. So we used to have this potential, and we still have it, but we still need regulations. We have something very wrong which happens in Egypt, which is the illegal hunting, and this illegal hunting should be regulated and to have deterring measures to limit such a kind of hunting. I used to have visitors from USA, and they were going to the pyramids, and then they were intimidated by people who were trying to reach their cars. That's why they felt insecure. Now we are working on closing the entrance to the pyramids and to be secured and to regulate the transportation means there. Maybe Parliament member Sahar was talking about establishing a holding company to be responsible for managing such sector. There are people working in the tourism sector say that there are mechanisms in place that to be implemented, and as we detailed in the roadmap, that we have to make use of the private sector and the investors. And one of the other recommendations is also to make use of the expertise in each sector, because there is a big difference between the investor and the experienced person in such sector. In order to have a good system, to have a taxi driver who is regulated or formal, with working with a formal entity, in order to be used to transport a tourist. How to have a partnership between uh, capital, resources, the private sector, the investors, and the experience in order to improve this sector. Why, I have a question, why don't you allow tourism from Iran? A lot of Persian people would like to come to Egypt. Why don't we market there? Can 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 I answer this question because I'm working in the tourism sector myself? Instead of bringing 3 million Persian people in Egypt, how are you going to bring them into Egypt? What kind of transportation is going to be used? We used to have travel agents which used to bring such numbers to Egypt from people who are ready to come tomorrow, and to instead of reinvent the wheel once again. I'm not saying that we are going to reject the Iranian or the Persian tourists, but is Egypt is ready to receive 3 million tourists? To my as much as I can remember, we used to have 80,000 rooms in Cairo. So you are going to bring what the number of tourists you are going to bring is based on the number of rooms and the mechanisms applied. For example, in the ports, if I am having the well accommodations and the well mechanisms, I'm going to bring a great number of tourists, and this is, of course, a very good thing. But we have already countries from which we can bring tourists if we actually regulated everything and made everything appropriate. The mechanism of, for example, of issuing visas, as we used to talk with Mr. Ilhami, we said that those who are having the visa for Schengen visa is going to be facilitated to enter Egypt. And this is going to facilitate a great number of tourists into Egypt. This is in order to drag your attention to the transportation means. If a tourist would when we need a tourist to come to Egypt, he has to fly to Egypt or to go by ship. So, but this is one of the mechanisms, and this is one of the infrastructures issues that we are talking about. Are the ports are enabled to intake such a kind or such a great number of tourists? Sharm el-Sheikh airport used to receive 128 flights per day, and this is the maximum. And in order to increase this number, I have to have higher capacity in the airport in order to intake such a great number of flights. No. That's why we are saying that the government, the experienced people, and the private sector and all other bodies are going to collaborate amongst themselves and to in order to achieve what we are aspiring.